episode number 39.
When I had my near-death experiences, I didn't exit consciousness. I entered consciousness of a different form.
To be able to allow the body to really become soil again, we need some modern technology.
It doesn't have a whole lot to do with kinky sex or blood sacrifices. It is about having a relationship with the goddess through nature.
When we see that God really, really wants us to love our enemies, you'll see this world transformed.
Why didn't Yoko step in and say this isn't what he wanted?
Well, she did it.
She's the one who had him cremated.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, Yoko.
Yeah, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to stay as vague as possible.
Okay,
so.
good. Let me know if you hear a drone over your house. Hi, this is Brant from the newly named Dance Past Sunset podcast, previously known as the Dance to Death Afterlife podcast. So if I say it that way, please forgive me as I make the transition to a new style of show that includes a lot more on aging as we approach end of life. And this second show on that subject is one I'm really excited about because it reminds me a lot of a group of young people in the 1960s who bought an old school bus and traveled across the country making history. For some of you cats who remember the 1960s and are willing to admit it, I'm referring to Ken Kesey's Magic Bus and the ensuing book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. But today, we have a new generation. These two amazing guys, Raja and Mark, have fixed up a 1973 milk truck and are crisscrossing the United States doing something that really impresses me. They are capturing the stories of seniors. Why? Well, you'll just have to keep listening to find out. I found you guys through Aging 2.0. Is that where I found you?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It was. You're one of the members of Aging 2.0, which is a pretty cool organization that's a bunch of collaborators like you and me that are looking to help seniors with advanced tools, tips, and technologies, age in place, live independently, live victoriously, and all that good stuff. And I was just going through the list of collaborators, and I saw you, and I said, hey, that looks kind of cool. But actually, you were there because of something else. Now, remind me what it was that you signed up for that you're no longer doing. The milk truck is new, right?
Yeah, the truck's kind of a new project.
Take me back to the very beginning. So, Raj, I know a little bit about you, being born in Jordan and raised in the UK and all over the place. So just give me the 30-second snapshot about you, and then Mark, you give me the 30-second snapshot, kind of your story, because I know you guys are very different. You know, Mark, you're a more American guy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, just
Raj,
why don't you start out and repeat what you told me earlier, and then we'll go to Mark.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I was fortunate enough really to grow up all over the world, the UK, the U.S., and Santa Fe, New Mexico, and, of course, in Jordan. And my blood is Jordanian Lebanese. And just in the context of aging, we approach things a little bit differently. I spent most of my life so far living with my dad's mom in the house. Mm-hmm. And that's, not uncommon. And so that kind of put a lot of perspective for me. And I never got to meet my dad's dad. And every summer we spent with my mom's parents, all the cousins and kids and everybody would kind of gather there for a month or two. So just in the context of aging, it's been a lot of exposure to my seniors in my life.
And how old are you?
I'm 23.
Okay. And yet, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this because you asked me that question earlier. And even though I spent so much time growing up with my grandmother, I haven't ever made an active effort until recently to gather and preserve some of her stories or ask her stories about my grandfather. That was kind of a recent, it wasn't until we started working on Ripple that I thought that, hey, that's something that I'm interested in, something I should do while I still have her there to tell me those stories. And so it's interesting that, it took 20 years for me to figure that out.
Wow.
And I'm glad I figured it out in time to hear them.
But you were already starting work on Ripple when you kind of had that epiphany, is that right?
Yeah, I would say it's because of Ripple that I did.
So what provoked you to start working on Ripple if it wasn't your own family? What was the seed that led you to start working on Ripple?
So we had another guy who still works on the team some of the time called Kevin. And Kevin and I started Ripple. Kevin had a father figure pass away in his life. And that kind of forced him to contemplate, what gets left behind when someone passes away. And in this case, there wasn't much. And there wasn't much of an online legacy or storybooks or anything like that for Kevin to reference to. And it felt like a void for him. And thinking about, my grandfather that passed away and friends that we knew that had passed away, it seemed like there ought to be some sort of a legacy of those memories. Those stories should be preserved somewhere so that even though someone's passed away, they're still accessible and, you can go back and visit and kind of... Yeah,
I totally get that. I mean, if you don't know your story, it kind of makes you feel like you're hanging in time and space with no orientation. It's like, who am I? Where did I come from? Where do I belong? Yeah. What's my clan? Who are my people? Yeah, I totally get that. Mark, what about you? Where did you start with all of this, and what's your story?
So mine's a little different. I'm American through and through. I was born in a small town in Northern California called Nevada City. It's like 2,000 people. And went to school with Raj down in California, and didn't really know him too well then, but I was working as a software developer in San Francisco and got hooked up with Raja and Kevin through a friend of a friend, and started working on these projects then. But my experience with like older adults and my own family was a lot different than his too. I think I had a pretty like typical American childhood in that I saw my grandma and grandpa on like Christmas and maybe in the summer once or twice. But I didn't really see my dad's side of the family almost ever. And so it was pretty divided, the young and the old. We kind of didn't see a lot of them, and they're sort of kept in the background, I guess, which I think is a typical thing in American culture. We don't really talk about aging so much as they do in other cultures.
And would you say, Mark, that what you and Raj and Kevin were feeling when you started collaborating was common among your age group, your peers, or was it uncommon? Were you kind of like, did your friends look at you and go, "That's weird, you want to like talk to old people"? What was your experience?
I think it was more it's something that a lot of people want to know, but they're not really sure how to start the conversation.
Interesting.
They wonder about their past, and they wonder about their grandparents, and they grew up with them sometimes, but they don't really know, and they're a little intimidated to just go up and ask, about their childhood or what they did growing up or just about who they are. And I think it's especially intimidating for people to go up to older adults that they don't know and start that conversation, even though it's definitely something that when we talk to people our age, it really resonates with them.
I was gonna say, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that when you guys, and I want you to tell me about your current journey in a minute, but when I know it's talking to older people and asking them about their stories, I bet you dollars to donuts they're really, really happy somebody asked and really, really happy to tell it. Am I right?
Yeah, that's I would say 99% true.
Yeah. Hey, give me a shot and I'll tell you my story in a heartbeat. Yeah,
No,
I mean, it's true. I mean, you know, you get to a certain age and you feel like you have a lot of experience and you want to pass it on. You want to leave something behind.
That's true, yeah. And who doesn't like to talk about themselves?
Yeah, it's so true.
But yeah, and I think a lot of times they feel like they have a lot of information to pass on, but they don't really have a way to do it, or somebody who seems to be interested. And so I think they get a pretty big kick out of talking to us usually.
And I think in a broader sense that one of the things that we're suffering from in our country and maybe even in the world is a lack of a forum for civil exchange. So not just between young and old, but between the races and religions. And, you get these camps and they're not talking to each other. I just believe, hey, find a way, sit down, have a cup of coffee, whatever, and have a dialogue, have a respectful dialogue. And you'll be amazed at how much ground you can cover. Wouldn't you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's the biggest thing we can do is maybe a species just listen to each other. And for the most part, we're also stubborn and we don't like to listen to things that we don't agree with. And I think just on alone, this trip alone for Mark and I, neither of us had really spent any significant time east of the Rockies, certainly not in the South. You learn about cultures and you learn about people, and especially talking to the older generation, you learn about what it was like for them 60, 70 years ago. And that's just an eye-opening experience that I don't know where I would have found that if I wasn't in the milk truck.
Yeah, and you see different opinions from your own. We spent a lot of time in California, so you can, going out to places like Georgia and Alabama, you run into different mindsets, and you hear a lot of opinions that are different than your own, and you learn to kind of bite your tongue and listen. And when you do that, you really get a perspective on why they feel the way they do and where that comes from. And you start to understand it more, which is has been really eye-opening.
Yeah, and I guess our hope with Ramblin' is to somehow share some of that experience with others, whether that's our website or, I mentioned to you a podcast or whatever we end up doing, find a way to, have more people experience what we have and the people that we've met.
I think it's totally groovy and I love it. So tell me again, before Ripple or after Ripple, there was
Zinnia. It was pretty much the same thing, except our focus on older adults and no longer on someone that's passed away.
Oh, so Ripple was for people who have already passed, and Zinnia was for people who have passed and people who are still alive, but that have a story to tell.
Right. Yeah. So when we were working on Ripple, we realized that one of the things we realized was that some of the best projects that came out of it were when a community tried to share stories about someone that was still alive. So, whether that was a grandparent, whoever it was, there was a higher level of motivation for everyone to come in and share those stories. And we were struggling to, even though we cared deeply about the sort of death scenario, we realized that maybe we should be focusing on older adults and getting those stories while they can still have input into the Zinnia. And so that's kind of what got us started down that road. And then, for a whole bunch of reasons, our team kind of flopped, and we decided that the next best step was the milk truck and just starting fresh.
So tell me about the milk truck. So this is really the third iteration, if you will, of a project that started with Ripple and moved into Zinnia and now is Ramblin' Stories, right? This is now the new initiative. Tell me about that.
Okay. So basically, our goal is to foster intergenerational communities by promoting a culture of storytelling around the lives of older adults. And so to kickstart this project, we thought that a good way to start would be to go out and actually start gathering stories from older people all across the country. And so we were looking for a way to do that and looking for a vehicle to travel in. And Kevin was at home in Santa Fe visiting and saw the milk truck parked outside of his childhood home. And he thought that, well, we all thought that it was the right mixture of comfort and space and had kind of a nostalgic feel that a lot of the old timers that we meet might like. And so we decided to buy it and fix it up, turn it into a mobile home, and travel across the country with it.
Does the milk truck have a name?
The milk truck does not have a name.
Oh, man, you got to give it one.
Yeah, well, we've been waiting. We've been waiting for it to happen on us, but it hasn't presented itself yet.
Yeah. How many miles have you put on that thing so far?
It's somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000, I think.
Yowza.
Because our odometer doesn't really work, so it's kind of a guessing game.
And so describe the milk truck. Like you're sitting in it right now, right?
We are, yeah.
Okay, tell me what you're looking at. Does it have beds in it? Does it have a recording studio?
This is 5-star camping. We've got bunk beds. We've got a pull-out bed, so you can have 3 people comfortably in here. And it's all most of the amenities of a RV, minus a bathroom and shower and that kind of thing. But it's the truck is from 1973.
Oh, wicked! That's wicked cool.
And it took a little bit of work, about 4 months of work, which I joke is about 3.5 months longer than we had hoped.
Yeah.
And get it ready. And we were kind of naive when we started doing all that. And, a whole bunch of engine work, and then we paneled the inside, and we've got hardwood flooring in here. I mean, it's
nice.
It's really a sight.
It's a cozy space. It's not super big. It's about this. The chassis is the same as a normal like Chevy truck, so it fits in a normal parking space. It's kind of a regular size, but the inside is a little more spacious. Raja can stand up in here. I can't. I'm a little taller. But
does it have any cooking facilities?
So we have we built a rack that sits on top of the whole thing. That's kind of it's like a deck. It's our little porch, and up there we have a couple boxes, and then one of those is a camp stove. So when it's nice weather, we sit up there and we can cook.
So Chow Time, you climb on top of the truck, open up the box, pull out the camp stove, and make a meal.
That's right. Yeah.
If we're too busy, we end up at Subway or McDonald's or something, but we try and find things to cook up there.
I love
and
it.
I just wanted to add as well, I mean, Mark said that the milk truck was kind of the right blend of nostalgia and comfort. And I would say that 80% of our interviews come from somebody, normally an old timer, coming up to the truck and just being curious into what we're doing and what it's like on the inside, and just starting a conversation that way.
Or saying, there used to be one of these in my town that rolled around and sold ice cream. I remember this thing, what are you guys doing with this?
Yeah. The milk truck makes it real easy for us to find people.
I actually probably worked on a milk truck like that. What is it, Ford, Chevy? What is it?
It's a Chevy.
It's a Chevy. Has it got a 6-cylinder in it?
Yeah.
Okay. I probably worked on one of those in a former life. I was a truck mechanic, and I worked for a Dream Made ice cream company in Washington, D.C., and they had a fleet of 275 step van trucks like the one you're talking about. Yep. And they hired me to repaint all of them, and that's how I got my start in auto body repair, was with the Dream Made ice cream. So I probably know that truck. And oh, by the way, when I was done painting them all, then they kept me on as a mechanic. So I've dropped the trannies in those things, rebuilt them, rebuilt the engines, all that stuff. So yeah, I know my way around that truck. Hey, well, I could join you as your mechanic. You're traveling.
Yeah, honestly, we could use your help. We break down pretty frequently, and we don't know much about cars, so we've been kind of learning on the fly.
Well, if it's a 73, it's probably got a carburetor in it, right? Not fuel injected. Yeah. There's half your problems right there. But I digress. So I got to ask about showering. So how often do you shower, and where do you go?
We stay clean, and that's one of the things that people are often astonished when they see us climb out of this and we tell them we've been living in it for 5 months. They'll be like, but you guys are so clean. How do you do it? So we have a gym membership at one of those big national chains.
Oh, there you go. Smart.
And it's $20 a month, and you get a free guest, so it covers both of us. And
Oh, aren't you guys smart? Well, good. Yeah, you just find one of those, use the shower, maybe get a workout even.
That's right.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. Now, when you so walk me through your process. So, how do you know where to stop, and how do you initiate the interviews with the older? How do you find them? How do you initiate the interviews? You mentioned that they'll come up to you on the truck. Is that how it works, or how do you go about your business?
So, I mean, like today, for example, or yesterday, I guess, we rolled into the town here called Houghton, Michigan, and it's real far up north here. And we rolled in kind of late, and it was kind of a surprise that we stopped here. We weren't really planning to come here, but we decided that we liked the name and liked the location, so we would give it a try. And we went into the McDonald's, and within 30 minutes, well, actually, right when we walked in, and an older gentleman and his wife were sitting there and asked us about the truck, and we sat and had dinner with them for a while. And on the way out, we bumped into 3 more old timers in town that were coming in to get their dinner at McDonald's. And one of them is the gentleman that we interviewed this morning that we had to postpone this call for. He grew up here his whole life. I understand he's actually never left the county, so he's a real local. And grew up playing in the copper mines and that kind of thing. But you just, anywhere you go, people either come up to the truck, and if nobody's come up to the truck, then we just go into the visitor center and see who they know. I mean, everybody's got an older adult in their life that has stories and they want to share them. So,
and does the truck have any signage on it, like "Come tell me your story," or what provokes their interest in the truck, other than that it's an old time truck?
Yeah, it's painted. It's teal and white, kind of a greenish and white color. And on the side of it, in big red letters, it says "The Ramblin' Story Wagon."
Ah.
So people see that and they'll come up and they'll say, "Story wagon? What's that about?" Or "What's the story? Come on!" They're like, "You guys tell stories." Any number.
I love it. I think it's amazing. It's just awesome. So, okay, now
and I should say, sorry, it's not just old timers that come up to the truck.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Kids love it too. You'll be driving this thing and you'll look over in the other lane and there'll be just, a truck full of kids just laughing their heads off at this truck, and somebody might come up and ask you about it, and they know somebody that we should talk to.
Yeah, last night we were in a parking lot, and a car full of like 6 teenage girls jump out and they're like, "Can we get a picture with your truck?" So they all ran up and took a picture with it and drove off.
Hey, not a bad way to meet girls,
Yeah, pretty much everybody. Everyone gets a kick out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, how many stories do you guys have in the can?
I'm not really sure.
Over 100?
Yeah, but I would say something like that. Yeah.
Okay,
just
cool.
About.
And how do you synthesize, or how would you synthesize what you have learned from those stories? Do you find some common themes, and if so, what are they, and how do you relate those back to your 20-something-year-old self? And by the way, Mark, I didn't ask you, how old are you?
23 too.
You're also
10 days
23.
Than Raja.
Okay, so how do you make sense of what you're hearing and apply it to your own lives?
Well, so we've interviewed people as young as maybe like 63, which isn't that old, and all the way up to 104.
Thank you for saying that, by the way, because I was born in 56.
It's funny, everybody's got a different definition of what old is or what an old timer is. What's old to you?
Old? Well, I always heard that old is however old you are plus 15 years.
That's right. That's pretty much what I've learned as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, we've met all sorts of people, folks that have, served combat in World War II. Just the other day in Wisconsin, we heard a story about smuggling cheese between towns during the war when that was rationed. And, those are experiences that, I hope we'll never have in my lifetime, but certainly are hard to understand just listening to them. But I think the common thread is just just staying young and excited about what you're passionate about in life. And that's kind of been my big takeaway. The folks that we've met that are still doing what they've always really enjoyed doing are just full of life and full of energy. And whether that's singing or reading or, I don't know, we've met beekeepers, all sorts of different things. That's kind of the big takeaway so far for me is just, and you hear it every day, right? I mean, that's the most cliche thing anyone's ever said to you, but really seeing it in action 60 years later sticks with you.
Wow, that's very cool. So find your passion and just sing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think it'll change the way you guys grow old? When you're 15 years older than where you are now, when you're 38 and you're old.
Well, I'll tell you this. When we talk to people who had very traditional sort of life paths, they like get a job at, some firm or something and work there for most of their lives. Their stories kind of go from their childhood to their like 20s and then pick up again when they're like 65 when they retire.
So there's a big black hole in the middle?
There's kind of this big black hole where, they'll be like, and then I worked here for 50 years.
Yikes.
And that's something that it's a little scary and not something that I really want to have happen to me. And so that's definitely something that I'm going to stay conscious of going forward is staying active, even if I have a normal job, and trying to keep my life interesting so that I don't just have a big black hole in the middle of my whole life.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. I left IBM. I was with IBM for 17 years. And, it's a good company, but at some point I realized it just wasn't for me. And I left.
Change and keeping things dynamic, and you don't want your life to get stagnant.
Right. Now, but the milk run is coming to an end, yes? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, unfortunately, this thing does not do great on gas, and wallets are not infinitely deep, so we're kind of cutting back towards the West Coast as we start running out of money. And, the hope is that we've gathered all these stories, and for the most part, we haven't really touched that content yet. So we're going to go back to it all and start editing and transcribing. Our hope is to turn a good handful of them into short 10, 15-minute podcasts, mostly just the person that we're talking to sharing stories and speaking, us just chiming in for context. And, of course, the website's kind of where everything goes, and we're hoping that we can get more and more people there excited to read stories or listen to stories. And,
or share their own.
I mean, that's the other really big thing is finding ways for people to either share their own story or to go out and get a story from an older adult in their family.
Now, who do you think's more likely to consume a story that you recorded, say, in, what was it, Houghton, Michigan? Houghton, Michigan. Okay. Shout out to Houghton, Michigan. So you got a couple stories there. Is it the families that want to hear those stories, or do you think it's somebody on the other side of the world that says, I want to hear the story of a senior from Houghton, Michigan?
I think it's going to be someone on the other side of the world for the most part. But at the same time, we were in the bar last night, and the people there that we talked to, everywhere we go, we talk about our project, and the people in the bar would probably also be interested in listening to that and learning about this guy that lives in their community, which is not a big town, and they probably never met him. And so I think that'll be interesting for them as well. But I really think it's all about presentation. So, we don't have the money to do this right now, but if you turn some of these stories into a short animation, then you can present it to an entirely different type of audience that might not come across the website or be interested in it by default. A much younger audience, even younger than ourselves. And so I think it's going to kind of be on us to figure out different creative ways to present the stories that were shared with us. And whether that's an illustration or an animation or a podcast or just a written story, I think different styles will appeal to different people, and finding that variety will, hopefully open doors to all sorts of different audiences for us.
Well, very cool. So where can folks find you besides Houghton, Michigan?
Ramblinstories.com. That's really the place to go.
And is that Ramblin' with a G on the end, or RAMBLIN stories?
And no G.
No G. Okay.
And no G, but both work. And of course, social media. I mean, we try and stay real active on Facebook and Instagram.
Also Ramblin' Stories on Facebook?
Yep, no spaces, just Ramblin' Stories.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the best way to stay up to date. And we're always looking for new places to go, new people to meet, new stories to read. So, we're friendly folks. Just give us a call or send it along. I mean, it's what we do.
And how much longer do you think you've got before you run out of gas in the milk truck? Maybe enough to get you back to California, or?
That's about it. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be making your way from Michigan back to California. Which route are you going to take?
So we never planned too far in advance. We know we're going to Minnesota next, and sort of just north of Minneapolis. And then, we don't know.
We'll see where the road takes us. Probably through Dakota and Wyoming, but there's no telling where we'll go.
Very cool. Well, guys, a last question. What's next for you? When you park the truck in California, where will you be? Will you be in San Diego? Where'd you guys start out?
So I'm going to be back in my hometown of Nevada City, which is up in the mountains. And Raj is going out to be with his girlfriend in Hawaii.
Ah, yes, the girlfriend in Maui. I remember now, Raj. Yeah. I don't blame you, by the way. I was in Maui earlier this year. Amazing.
Yeah, I'll be joining her. And she helps out with Ramblin' a lot as well. Mark and I are not grammar enthusiasts, you might say. And Holly really helps keep us in check and make sure that everything we do is interesting and engaging. And
good. When
we get lazy on Instagram, she's on our tail. So, no, she's one of the hidden forces behind the milk truck for sure.
Excellent. And what's her name?
Holly.
Holly, thank you for what you do. I think it's a great, great thing you're doing, and I know a lot of folks in my audience will love it as well, because it's like, hey, you know what? Somebody cares about what I have to say. One of these days, go out and dig up a song. Is a John Prine song, and you can YouTube it. It's called Hello in There, and it's probably a 30-year-old song. But John Prine, of course, is one of the great songwriters of Americana music, and this is a song about older people, kind of like being ignored and being overlooked. I used to have the song as part of my repertoire because I perform, and it was just too sad, so I cut it out because it really is a sad song. But check it out. It's a great song, but it kind of tells gives the message that it's easy to get overlooked if you're graying. Hello in There by John Prine. All right, let me find this quote. Give me just 2 seconds, guys. What are y'all doing there? Inflating the tires?
We don't have AC in the truck. And so we're closing the windows so that you can hear us better, but it got real hot in here, so we're just airing out some of the heat.
All right, so this is from Barking Up the Wrong Tree by Erik Barker, The Surprising Science Behind Why Everything You Know About Success is Mostly Wrong. And I didn't expect to find anything in there about what you and I are talking about, but in fact, Mr. Barker, and I'm going to follow up with him and find out the exact research, but it was done by Emory University. And what he says in the book is that the single greatest factor for happiness among young people is not, where they went to school or how, whether they listened to Mozart in the womb or any of those things, but it's knowing the stories from their family of origin. exactly what you guys are doing. And what I do with Storybox, it gives people a sense of belonging and security. I know who my people are. I know where I came from. I know my clan. And that turns out to be really, really important to how successful they are and how happy they are. Isn't that cool? I like audio stories because I think there's a certain nuance that you get from a voice that you can't get from text, because text can be kind of flat. And I always remember this lesson from Zig Ziglar, who was one of the great positivity thinkers of the past, and he said, if you take the phrase, I did not say he beat his dog, in text, you miss what happens when you get the nuances. I did not say he beat his dog. Somebody else said it. I did not say he beat his dog. I said he beat his, cat. I did not say he beat his dog. I wrote it down in a letter. See, that's where that vocal nuance brings a new dimension to stories that a written story doesn't. That's why I like Storybox as a tool for recording stories, and what you guys are doing, because you put everything down in a digital recorder, right?
Totally, yeah. And you get a feel for the person's life, especially with older people. Their life has an effect on their voice. Like, we were talking to this guy who ran a power plant in Iowa, a hydroelectric dam, for 30 years or something, and his voice is pretty hoarse. And I think a big part of it is because he spent so much time on this dam, which is super loud, so he was always yelling. Oh yeah, that makes sense. It flavors everything.
Yeah, and I'll just also, I remember a piece of research that stuck with me from the Ripple days when we were interviewing folks about how they remember loved ones who have passed away. A number of times, most people don't have recordings of that person that passed away, but a number of times they had a voicemail, and they saved that voicemail, and that voicemail was the last sort of audio recording that they had of the person that passed away, and that was bounds more powerful, maybe even than any photo that they had. Just being able to go back and listen to that voice.
Where else I've heard that from, Raj, is the survivors of 9/11, who the last thing they had from someone who perished was maybe a voicemail or a voice recording of some kind, and that turns out to be one of the most treasured keepsakes from that person is a recording of their voice.
Yeah, and if you imagine how powerful that is, just being, a lot of times a voicemail is just like a call me back type of thing,
Yeah.
The effect that having that recorded, like an actual story, or them actually talking about themselves and their life.
So just think about this recording. So, this is all going to go down for posterity. One day your 23-year-old selves will be listening to, remember back in 2017 when Kevin and Raj and Mark and I got in that old milk truck, the 1973 milk truck, and you'll be telling that story, but you'll be like, yeah, I took a trip in a old milk truck back in, and your grandkids will be going, what?
Shut up, Grandpa. Here's the milk truck story again.
The milk truck. Oh my God, here's the milk truck story again. Well, guys, listen, all the best to you. I think it's amazing. It's wonderful, and I applaud you. And so last question, and that is, how can folks help other than just encourage you on? I mean, is there a way to buy a product or somehow get money to you?
We have a donate button on the page, but we're not really set up as a nonprofit. The real way to help out is just to be part of the website, be part of the trip, and share stories. The more people that we have doing that, the more success we feel in this project. So that's really our hope.
Excellent. Raj and Mark, thank you very, very much. Stay safe out there, all right?
All right,
yeah, we will.
I could see myself, and I'm actually half serious about this. I could see myself hanging out with those guys for a few thousand miles in that milk truck, because I think it would be so much fun. And, bringing my guitar and banging out a few tunes with them and having some lunch on the roof and hearing the stories of old people. What a great experience, and I'm glad that they're learning from it. So, in closing, I mentioned briefly Storybox. Please, please, please go out to lovestorybox.com. Check out the video and take the survey. Your voice, your vote is really important to me to know how to move forward with that particular product, which could very well capture the audio stories of your beloved. So check it out. lovestorybox.com, and go to the new Facebook page, which is called Dance Past Sunset. You'll find it at Dance Past Sunset, and say hello. I'd love to see you there. Until then, my beloved, this is your host, Brant Huddleston, signing off.